Well, welcome back to a new year. It is 2025, and we are into, unbelievably, season 8 of the Public Relations Podcast. I cannot believe how long we've been doing this show. There is so much stuff going on this year. We've got Comms Question Time, that other show that we did the pilot of last year, which I'm going to be bringing back this year and really focusing on as well, getting lots of great panelists on there, and we'll be discussing your particular questions. So if you're part of an organisation and you're wondering, what do I do with this comms challenge, then that show is going to be perfect for you, because I'm going to be having lots of guests on there discussing how to tackle those specific problems for you, people from agencies around the world. And if you heard those pilot shows, it was such a great format. We had so many different ideas being debated and discussed. But for this year, I'm also bringing back more guest interviews again here on the Public Relations Podcast itself, rather than just those PR Bites episodes where I talk myself, getting some guests in here too. And I'm absolutely delighted to be kicking off 2025 with Andrew Healy from Water and Wall in New York. Hello to you, Andrew. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Good to chat. Good to meet you.
You are right in the heart of the financial space in New York, aren't you? Which is no surprise why you're actually doing it. Just give us the TLDR, the too long didn't read rundown of what you do.
Sure. So I'm a co-founder at Water and Wall. We're a digital marketing and communications agency focused on financial and professional services. And the bulk of our work is in the financial space. And so it's a lot of asset management firms, investment banks, capital markets, wealth managers, alternative managers, hedge funds, private equity, real estate, fintech, anyone who manages money or advises on money or wealth, or makes sort of the fintech plumbing to sort of move money around the world. We work on. And we do everything from traditional PR and media relations, brand message development, and then some creative work as well. Probably about a third of our work is in sort of the content and digital space. So a lot of thought leadership, a lot of branded materials, marketing collateral, executive visibility.
It's interesting. You focus very much on finance, don't you? And it was interesting because when we were first talking, we were, you were kind of saying to me about the fact that this is quite a niche space. And it's like, well, but then we also carried on talking. We just came up with hundreds and hundreds of examples of how finance actually affects your life. But it is perhaps something that is less understood than, say, going to the local bakery and saying you should buy our buns because they're tasty. So how do you approach financial PR? And can you give us some ideas about some of the campaigns you've been working on recently, without naming names, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny to think about financial services as niche, given how broad and sort of widespread it is and how global it is. We were chatting beforehand. There's very little that people do on a daily basis that doesn't somehow tie back to financial services, whether it's your local bank, credit card, fintech, payments on an app, particularly in the digital age. Everything is so modern. So I think when people really sort of sit back and maybe they think finance doesn't impact them that much, so much of their lives is connected. But I think the fact that so much of it's in the background is a blessing and a curse. I mean, I think it's a good thing. It's so seamless and frictionless that people don't even necessarily recognize that that's a good thing. But I think there's a lot that financial brands do for consumers or for institutions and for businesses that maybe they're not getting their sort of fair share of credit for.
So the goal of most clients coming to you is to what? To kind of let the public hear about them, or is it other services, or what's the kind of briefings you get?
Yeah, so I mean, it's all across the board, but I'd say sort of at a high level, it's raising their brand, raising their perception of who they are, what they do, what their services are, what they sell, raise their brand awareness and perception, and sort of help drive leads and drive sales and sell, whether it's more product. It really depends on sort of what it is. And, with some of our investment banking clients, they're focused more on business owners and private equity firms, whereas a consumer firm might be a little more focused on, like if it's a community bank, you're focused on your local folks there. But I think the services come down to are pretty much the same. You're looking to sort of build trust or rebuild trust in the case of some financial firms. Talk about the value that you provide to society or to your clients. Talk about what makes you separate and makes you a little bit different from some of your competitors.
So without actually naming a company, because we're always really careful not to do that on that. But can you give us an idea of the sort of recent campaign that you've been involved in and some of the challenges that you've had with that? Give us a sort of perspective of what it's like on the front line right now in financial PR.
All right, I'll give you a good example. So we work with the U.S. arm of a very large global financial conglomerate that I won't name because they'll probably sue me. Recognized here and across the pond as well, but they're very much a European firm, and so the brand awareness here isn't as much. The campaign I'm specifically referencing, so we were promoting their sustainable investing unit. And ESG and sustainable investing is far more mature and evolved and accepted in Europe than it is here in the US. even before some of the recent political pushback and sort of anti-ESG. So the messaging, it's not apples to apples. The messaging that might work in, say, France or in Europe or in the UK might not necessarily translate over here, and it particularly doesn't right now. And so we were brought on board and for partly the reason to sort of help come up with that new sort of brand strategy here, specifically for this group, because they have great capabilities, great leadership, great executive team, and for whatever reason, just wasn't resonating. And when we took a look at it, we figured out that the pitch that was being basically used was written for a different audience. So It was a matter of sort of breaking that down, figuring out what the core DNA message points were, figure out a way to localize it and Americanize it here, and just be sort of an outside point of view, just to say, well, listen, this isn't going to be relevant here, and here's why. And I think for a lot of brands, they get very precious with their messaging because they spend a lot of time on it, they spend a lot of money on it, and it's good to have that North Star brand messaging. But I think it's also very important to be flexible. You also, from a localization standpoint, you need to really tailor the message. So we did a lot of upfront brand messaging work on it. And then once that was approved and everything was good, we took it to market, media relations, content, thought leadership, social media. It was a really sort of good integrated campaign. And it was more effective because we were telling a story that people wanted to hear in a way that they wanted to hear.
Yeah, this is the whole fundamentals of PR, isn't it? It's not meeting people where you want them to be. It's meeting them where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that was a little sensitive, here in the States, anti-ESG, there's a lot of pushback on it. So we had to take that into account. And for this client in particular, they were really focused on institutional investors. So, we're talking about a sophisticated story to a very narrow, sophisticated audience. There's a lot that you need to consider. It can't just be this sort of top-down approach.
It's really interesting. Okay, so you're talking about comparing it with the European approach to the American approach. I mean, what sort of differences did you see? I mean, without going into all of them, because it sounds like there were a lot. But I mean, are we talking about just the way that people approach finance? Or is it the mindset of it? Or is it the way that they operate as businesses?
I don't think that businesses, I think specifically to sort of ESG and sustainability, European investors, particularly European institutional investors, it's just a much more of an accepted asset class. Right. They're further along in I don't want to say the education, but they're further along in the acceptance of that as being, just like, equities or fixed income or, small cap, mid cap. And it's not necessarily investing in an ESG fund as it is them holistically assessing as an investment through the lens of different risk mitigation factors, one of which being sustainability and sort of climate. So it's almost the opposite of what's taking place over here. It's so polarized. And again, I don't want to keep coming back to some of the current climate. Yeah. Even 5 years ago, when ESG here was sort of at its peak, just comparing it to some of the European messaging, since their audience were bought into it and understood it so much more, they could have a much more nuanced, specific, complex conversation.
So you're almost starting from the point of what even is it, rather than going into the detail of it.
Yeah. So exactly. So you think about exactly, or over here, what is it? Or even if they didn't know what it was, but they might have some some skepticism. Well, then you really need to reconsider the way that you start a conversation. Just like if you have a conversation about your favorites, I don't know, your favorite football club with a friend who knows it, and you can get really deep about strategy and the manager because they know what you're talking about. And then if you meet a stranger who has no idea what this football club even is, you're going to lose them within the first 30 seconds. You need to sort of meet them where they are, which is
so. How did you then pitch that though? Because if you're trying to get across a different message, and you're going to media and outlets and whoever, and you're pitching a different message to people that want to hear an established way of thinking, how did you pitch it to get it in there? Did you say, look, this is a new angle, new approach, or how did you go about it?
So for this specific campaign, since this firm in question has a pretty high profile visibility, I mean, we leveraged that right away. Yeah. So, mentioning this brand name definitely opened on some doors. Talking about the long, successful history they've had in this category in Europe and some of those other countries, that definitely was another leg up. And then talking about the executive team, so the brand was well recognized. The executive team had decades of experience, and they had a proven performance and track record over in Europe. So right away, we as opposed to pitching a startup, for example, you don't have any of those benefits. You can kind of create the story from scratch, but very often that can be really, really hard. So we particularly actually, when we do work with a ton of European firms where we represent their U.S. arm, just to sort of localize it, be their sort of the man on the street here in New York City and Boston where we are. But one of the things I really love about those types of firms is you can kind of get the best of both worlds. They have a legacy, they have a history, they have a track record you can kind of lean on, but at the same time, you're telling a brand new story here. So you can use all the benefits of all of that legacy brand recognition, but for any extra baggage that's not relevant here, you could just completely throw it away. So it truly is like the best of both worlds.
Andrew, let's move on, because I mean, I would love to talk about your campaigns forever, because I think it is a fascinating space. Let's just talk about AI, because this is something that we've talked about as well, is that our feelings about this, and we're hearing about firms, we've heard about major PR firms kind of consolidating, saying that technology is changing things, making it a different PR world. I think we both agree that PR still has to have the human element, because AI is not going to be able to do it. I mean, my personal feeling, and I use AI all the time, really helps me as an efficiency tool. But the problem is that when I try to put in new ideas, it constantly comes back to the sort of commonly agreed way of doing PR, which is what its data set is all based on. So it struggles to be innovative. That's my feeling. What's yours?
Yeah, I mean, look, we view it as an efficiency play.
Yeah.
The biggest commodity in the world is time. That's the biggest thing, particularly for us in a client, being on the agency side, servicing different clients and having so many different aspects of the business. There's never enough time in the day. And so if there is a resource such as AI that can give me back 10% of my day over the course of a week, month, quarter, I mean, that's a significant amount of time. And if it can do that, and that's why I view it as an efficiency, from an efficiency standpoint, that's huge. Now, there's tons of risk. To your point, everybody is sort of using the same chatbots. It's using the same data pools. So a lot that comes out, a lot of it depends on how specific of a prompt goes in. If you do a lazy prompt, you'll get a lazy response. If we did something yesterday, I think we spent 20 minutes on the prompt, and the response was worth it because it was really on par. Yeah. But for us, we're as much focused on the downsides and the risk as we are the upside. We never mention clients in these tools. We reference them, or we'll talk about a $20 billion wealth management firm or a private equity real estate firm, but we never name names. We never mention specific products or performance or anything proprietary. God forbid this thing would ever come out. Nothing, no, secretive information there. Yeah. But, when you think about, 20 years ago when I started my career, I used to spend the first 90 minutes of the day faxing media clips to our clients. Yeah. Email came around, and that gave me back, that by the time I would put it all in, they gave me back an hour each day. So I think this is just the continuation of that. And, there's certainly industries that will feel the disruption more than others. And we're so early days, it's impossible to predict any more than, say, 12 months. But when you think about some of the same redundant work that our the people in our industry do, whether it's drafting press releases or drafting social copy or writing executive bios, there's a lot of repetitive work that, in addition to being super mundane and not exciting to work on, is perfect for an AI tool that they could, if they could speed up the process by 75%, everything needs a human touch at the end, because very often what comes out is very commoditized and very...
The problem is, because, I mean, I even find doing this podcast that a lot of the pitches I get feel like they've just been generated in that way as well. It's just been automatically inserted the name of the podcast, and that's it. And it feels to me like the grunt stuff, the grind, definitely we want AI to be doing. But I feel like in PR, you've still got to have that human icing on the cake to make that thing stand out.
Yeah, I mean, look, you want to get your fingerprints on it. You want to make sure you're not using language that your competitor across the street is using. So you want to edit it, if nothing else, for that. So it's proprietary and it's your own. But listen, it's what comes out is very commoditized, and brands have their own specific voice and perspective and philosophy. So, very often, and we've gotten better as we've sort of trained ourselves, and the prompts get better, so what comes out gets a little bit better. But there has to be a human editor at the end of that. Otherwise, I mean, you could risk putting out misinformation, which isn't good. Yes. But even to your point, even if it's not misinformation, you're putting out crappy content that sounds like it's, in
which case it just gets lost in the noise.
But all it takes is just a little bit of effort just to personalize it, give it the vetting. Like, we never send out blast pitches. I know a lot of agencies that do that. It's the most, and reporters will tell us that they can. It's so obvious.
I can tell you as an ex-journalist, you can feel it. Yeah.
So similar to, we don't send out blast pitches just because reporters will see it. It's a bad reputation for us and for our clients. Putting out AI generated content that wasn't vetted, that wasn't proof, that wasn't repackaged in a way that actually feels, organic. To your point, you're getting pitches that were written by some bot. But if somebody were to take 90 seconds just to personalize that a little bit, put your name in there, maybe reference a recent guest, it doesn't take that much to sound like a human. Exactly. So, I don't see it replacing us anytime soon. I've never been necessarily concerned there. The whole co-pilot metaphor, I think, is the way to view it. If it can give us back time, make us more efficient, and we can use that time to do more high-level work, whether it's creative work with clients or working to grow our agency. I mean, it's the greatest gift in the world.
Andrew,
but for now,
we've got to wrap. We're running out of time. So very quickly, how can people find you if they want to get hold of you?
So we're at waterandwall.com. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. You can see that. Reach out to us, connect. We'd love to connect with folks, prospects, brands, anyone in the financial space or in the PR space.